Okay, so are you ready to dive into the power of now today? We're tackling Eckhart Tolle, and, I gotta say,
Oh, yeah.
some of these excerpts you sent over have been really intriguing. I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, it's a book that's really resonated with people, and it's for good reason.
Yeah.
I think Tolle he has this way of taking these kind of complex ideas, about consciousness and presence
Right?
and making them somehow feel really relatable.
Yeah, and that's what we're going for today, right? We're
Yeah.
trying to find those little golden nuggets,
Absolutely.
like those aha moments
Mhm.
that you can actually apply to your life,
Yeah.
even if you only have, 10 minutes to think about this stuff.
Right. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? It's like you don't need to go on some big retreat to kind of access these truths.
Yeah, you don't have to go find a mountaintop in Tibet or something.
Exactly. You can just incorporate it into your everyday life.
Okay, so Tolle, he kind of starts with this thing that I think we all experience,
Yeah.
which is that we're kind of addicted to our own thoughts.
Yes.
Like we're constantly, our mind is like a time machine.
Yeah.
It's either replaying the past or kind of rehearsing for the future.
Yeah.
But how often are we really here?
That's the question, isn't it? And what's fascinating is that Tolle's not saying thinking is bad. It's not like we should never think.
Right.
But it's about recognizing when we're so caught up in that thinking that we're missing the actual present moment.
Yeah, and he actually calls that psychological time, right?
He does, yeah.
And I think it's so true because it's like when you think about it, we're either, reliving something that happened in the past which you can't change,
Right.
or we're worrying about something in the future that hasn't happened yet.
Right, and creating all this anxiety and stress.
Yes, and that's actually where a lot of our unhappiness comes from, he says.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the biggest sources of suffering, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, you ever have that feeling where it's like everything's objectively fine in your life,
Mm-hmm.
but you just feel kind of uneasy or agitated or stressed, and you're like, why am I stressed?
Exactly. Like I should be content right now, but something feels off.
Yes, and he would say that's your cue. That's your body telling you you're not fully present. You're letting your mind drag you around.
Yeah.
It's like a little alarm bell going off.
Mm.
Hey, pay attention. You're missing out on this moment.
Yeah, and so the solution that he offers is to tap into what he calls the power of now.
Yes. And it sounds so simple, doesn't it?
It does. And when I first heard that, I was like, okay, is this a little too woo-woo for me?
Yeah.
Like the power of now, what does that even mean? But then as I started to actually read what he meant by it,
Yeah.
it's really practical.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that you have a choice in every moment. Do you want to let your mind just run the show,
Right.
or are you going to choose to be present?
Exactly. And to recognize that you are not your thoughts.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge.
It's like that's one of those paradigm shifts that can be really transformative. Yeah, because how often are we totally merged with our thoughts?
It's all the time, right?
And we're believing every single one.
Yeah, like they're facts.
Yeah, like this is the truth.
Right.
When really they're just kind of these fleeting mental events.
Exactly. It's like they're clouds passing through the sky. They're not, you're the sky.
And one of the ways that he suggests that we can start to practice this awareness is by bringing our attention to our breath.
The breath. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how to actually do that.
Okay, so you don't have to breathe in any kind of special way or anything.
Okay.
It's just bringing your attention to the sensation of your breath. So you might notice the air entering and leaving your nostrils,
Yeah.
the rise and fall of your chest or your belly.
Hmm.
And as you focus on your breath, you'll probably notice thoughts coming up. It's completely normal.
I mean, my mind's like
Exactly.
it's like a highway sometimes.
It is like a highway, and that's okay.
Right.
Just notice the thoughts. Don't judge yourself for having them.
Right.
Just acknowledge them and then gently guide your attention back to the breath.
So it's like we're training a muscle, the
Exactly.
presence muscle.
Yeah. The more you do it, the stronger it gets.
Okay. I like that. I like that analogy.
Right. And it can be really helpful because it's like you're giving your mind something to focus on.
Right.
Because otherwise it's just going to wander off and do its own thing.
Exactly. And that's usually where the trouble starts.
Exactly.
But Tolle doesn't stop there.
He doesn't.
He's got all these other kind of juicy concepts.
Yeah, he's got a lot to say.
And one of them that I have to admit I was a little intimidated by at first was this idea of the pain body.
The pain body.
I was like, ooh, that sounds kind of scary.
It does have a certain ring to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's actually a really helpful concept once you understand it.
Okay, so tell me about this pain body.
Okay, so Basically, the pain body is this accumulation of old emotional pain that we all carry around with us.
Okay, we all have baggage.
Yeah, it's like an invisible backpack.
Oh, good.
Full of, past hurts, traumas, resentments, all that heavy stuff.
And it's not like we're consciously choosing to carry that stuff around. It's like,
Right. It's not like, oh, I think I'll pack some resentment in my backpack today.
yeah, like let me add a little trauma to this.
Exactly. It's more like it's operating beneath the level of our awareness.
So it's unconscious.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. That pain body, it wants to survive.
Oh, no.
I know, right? Like any entity, it wants to perpetuate itself.
Okay, so how does it do that?
So it feeds off of our negative energy. It wants
Okay.
us to stay stuck in those old patterns of thinking and feeling.
So it's like when you're in a bad mood,
Yes.
and it's like everything just seems worse than it actually is.
Exactly. You're like a magnet for negativity.
Yeah, and you kind of almost want to like pick a fight or something.
Yeah, or like dwell on all the things that are wrong in your life.
Yes, or like call your ex.
Right. All those bad decisions.
Exactly. It's like,
Like you're possessed by Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh.
yes,
Everything is gloomy and hopeless.
that is a perfect way to describe it.
Right. That's the pain body, alive and well, pulling the strings.
No, okay. So how do we get rid of this pain body?
Well, you can't exactly get rid of it like it's part of our human experience,
Okay.
but you can become aware of it. And that's the first step to recognizing when it's showing up.
Okay, so like mindfulness?
Exactly. Mindfulness is key.
Okay.
Because when you're aware of it, you can start to create some separation between you and that negativity.
Okay.
You can start to say, oh, this is my pain body talking. This isn't me.
I love that.
Right. And that's where the power of the present moment comes in.
Right.
Because when you're present, you're not giving that pain body the attention it needs to survive.
Right. So if you're focused on your breath, for example,
Exactly.
you're not in your head reliving all the bad stuff.
Exactly. You're not giving it that energy.
That's so powerful, and it's so simple.
It is simple, but again, it's not always easy.
Right. It takes practice.
It takes practice, and it takes a willingness to kind of face those uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah. But it sounds like it's worth it.
It's so worth it because on the other side of that is freedom.
Freedom from our own minds.
Exactly.
And that's something I think we all want a little bit more of.
Absolutely. And it's like that saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. Like we're all going to experience painful emotions in life.
Right.
That's just part of being human.
Yeah, nobody gets out of here unscathed.
Exactly. But we don't have to let those emotions control us.
Right. We don't have to suffer.
Exactly. And that's, I think, where this idea of surrender comes in.
Surrender. Okay, so Tolle talks about surrender.
He does. Yeah. It's a big part of his teaching.
Okay. I have to admit that word has always been a little bit tough for me.
Yeah. I get that.
Like it sounds a little bit passive, like you're giving up or something.
Yeah. I can have those connotations for sure.
But I think what he's talking about is a little bit different, right?
Yeah. It's not about giving up or becoming passive. It's more about relinquishing our inner resistance to what is.
So it's about acceptance.
Exactly. It's about saying yes to the present moment, even when it's difficult, even when we don't like it.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Right. Because when we resist reality, when we fight against what is, we create a lot of unnecessary suffering for ourselves.
So it's about kind of aligning ourselves with the flow of life rather than trying to swim upstream all the time.
Exactly. It's about trusting that the universe has our back, even when it doesn't feel like it.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we surrender when everything in us wants to resist?
Well, it starts with becoming aware of our resistance. Noticing those thoughts, those feelings, those physical sensations that come up when we're fighting against reality.
So like mindfulness again.
Mindfulness is key, yeah.
Okay.
And then from that place of awareness, we can start to make a different choice.
Okay.
We can choose to soften into the present moment, to accept what is, rather than fighting against it.
And you're saying that that can actually be a powerful place to be?
It's incredibly powerful because it allows us to tap into a deeper wisdom, a deeper intelligence that's always there beneath the surface of our minds.
It's like when you finally stop trying to control everything.
Yes.
And you just kind of let go.
Yeah, and you allow things to unfold naturally.
That's when the magic happens.
Exactly. It's like we're getting out of our own way.
I love that.
And allowing life to support us in ways that we can't even imagine.
So it's not about being passive, but it's about acting from a place of alignment.
Exactly. He calls it surrendered action.
Surrendered action. I like that.
Right. It's not about being passive. It's about taking action from a place of deep inner peace and trust.
Okay, so it's like those times when you're so absorbed in what you're doing that you lose track of time.
Yes. Those flow states.
Yes.
Those are glimpses of our true nature shining through.
It's like you're in the zone.
Exactly. And Tolle would say that those moments aren't accidents. They're available to us more and more often as we cultivate presence and surrender.
So the more we practice this, the easier it gets.
Exactly. We're training our minds to be more present, more grounded in the here and now.
And that's when we can start to experience those glimpses of joy, those moments of deep connection.
Exactly. And it's not just about our own individual experience.
Okay.
Tolle talks about how this shift in consciousness, it has a ripple effect that extends outwards. It influences the collective consciousness.
So you're saying that our own awakening has the potential to contribute to a larger awakening, a shift in human consciousness as a whole.
Precisely as more and more individuals awaken to their true nature, the energy of the planet shifts.
Wow, that's a beautiful thought.
It is, isn't it? It's like we're all connected. We're all part of this web of consciousness.
And even though things might look pretty bleak in the world right now,
Yeah, there's no denying that there's a lot of suffering in the world.
there's a lot going on.
There is, but I think that's all the more reason to focus on our own awakening.
Okay, so it's not about ignoring the problems of the world,
No, not at all.
but about approaching them from a more conscious, more awakened state.
Exactly. It's about being the change we want to see in the world.
Love that. Okay, so we've talked about being present. We've talked about surrender. We've talked about the pain body.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is a lot. But what about happiness?
Happiness, yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of the goal of all of this?
That's a great question, and it's something that Tolle addresses directly.
Okay, good, because I was going to say.
He distinguishes between what he calls fleeting happiness,
Okay.
which is the kind of happiness that we often chase in the external world. You know, like getting that new car or getting that promotion.
Right, the things that we think are going to make us happy.
Exactly. And then there's this deeper, more sustainable joy that he calls the joy of being.
The joy of being. Okay, so tell me more about that.
So the joy of being, it's not dependent on anything outside of ourselves.
Okay.
It arises from within when we connect to the stillness, the peace that's always present beneath the surface of our thoughts.
It's like we already have everything we need for true happiness within us.
Exactly. We just have to remember how to access it.
So how do we do that? Okay, so how do we access that? How do we tap into that joy of being?
Well, it's not really about doing anything. It's more about being.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a sense of presence in our everyday lives.
So like those moments when you're so absorbed in something that you lose track of time.
Exactly. Those flow states, those are glimpses of the joy of being.
Okay.
It's like we're completely present in the moment and everything just flows effortlessly.
Yeah, and it feels amazing.
It does, doesn't it? It feels like everything just clicks into place.
It does. And then you look at the clock and you're like, wait, what? Where did the time go?
Exactly. Time seems to disappear because we're not even aware of it anymore.
So how do we create more of those moments in our lives? Is it just about waiting for them to happen?
Well, we can't exactly force those moments to happen,
Right.
but we can create the conditions that make them more likely to occur.
Okay, so like what kind of conditions?
Well, as we've been talking about, it starts with cultivating a sense of presence in our everyday lives.
Okay.
And that can start with something as simple as paying attention to our breath.
Our breath again?
The breath is so powerful because it's always there with us. It's like an anchor to the present moment.
Okay.
So even just taking a few moments throughout the day to just stop and notice your breath can make a big difference.
Okay, so it's not about like meditating for an hour every day.
No, not unless you want to.
Okay.
It's more about finding little pockets of presence throughout the day.
Okay, so like what are some other ways that we can do that?
Well, another thing that Tolle talks about is becoming more aware of our senses.
Our senses.
Yeah, like right now you can notice the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sounds you can hear around you,
Yeah.
the sights, the smells.
Yeah.
It's about really tuning into the present moment through our senses.
Okay, so it's like bringing more awareness to the everyday things that we usually just kind of do on autopilot.
Exactly, because when we're on autopilot, when we're not really paying attention, that's when our minds tend to wander and we get lost in our thoughts.
Right, and that's when we start creating all that unnecessary suffering for ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, so mindfulness of our breath, mindfulness of our senses. What else?
Well, another really powerful practice is gratitude.
Gratitude, okay.
Yeah, because when we're feeling grateful for what we have, we're automatically more present.
That makes sense.
It's like it shifts our focus from what's missing in our lives to what's already here.
So like even if we're having a really bad day,
Yeah, even then.
there's always something to be grateful for.
Always.
Okay.
I like that.
It could be something as small as like having a roof over your head,
Yeah.
or food to eat, or just being alive in this moment.
I'm feeling more grateful already.
Right. It's
Oh,
powerful stuff.
it is. So we've talked about presence, surrender, the pain body, the joy of being, mindfulness of our breath and our senses.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Is there anything else that we should know about Tolle's work, or is that a good place to kind of wrap things up? Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that it's not about being perfect.
Okay.
It's about progress, not perfection.
I like that.
It's about showing up each day with a willingness to learn and to grow and to practice these principles to the best of our ability.
And to be kind to ourselves when we inevitably mess up.
Exactly. We're all human. We're all learning and growing at our own pace.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of Tolle's work.
Me too. There's so much more to explore.
But it's definitely left me with a lot to think about and, more importantly, to practice.
Yeah. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's not just about reading about this stuff. It's about actually putting it into practice in our own lives.
So true. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive into the power of now.
It's been my pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. And until next time, remember to breathe, be present, and embrace the power of this present moment.